Hello Exiles, and welcome to my Path of Exile 3.24 Necropolis League Ice Nova Frostbolts Occultist Build Guide Day 1 update. I just wanted to go over a couple of changes that I've made since initially making the build guide to accommodate the League mechanic and how it changes maps and changes other things within the League. To start off, I just want to talk about item prices a little bit. Charge stacking and Ice Nova of Frostbolts has been a lot more popular than it was last league and more popular than I expected it to be. So Ice Nova of Frostbolts is a bit more expensive in the axe, especially if you didn't get it early. When I ran the lab in Act 3, I got pretty lucky and got Armageddon Brand of Recall, and I was able to sell that for 3C and then get Ice Nova of Frostbolts for 3C. So I was chilling in Act 3, and by the end of Act 10, I had made about 10 chaos in total, so I was able to afford a couple of other good cheap uniques. I was also a bit slower in the axe since I dink around so often than the axe during the league start, so it took me about 7 hours to get through, which on the upside afforded me a couple of cheap uniques that you wouldn't otherwise get that late into a league start. The build feels pretty good throughout the axe. I know I've done it. I did it last league, since last league was the first time that we had first Ice Nova or Frostbolts. And I practiced it several times since, but it still feels really good through the axe, especially the later axe. You fly through it. Katava has never been such a joke as he is with this build. Some alternatives in case you are not able to get Ice Nova Frostbolts in Act 3. You can link Frostblink with added cold damage. If you have another free link, you can throw an increased AoE or another skill support gem that helps it, and that will let you fly through at least the trash mobs until you get to Act 6, and then or Act 7. And you can do the lab again. Second lab, you get another chance for the gem. At that point, you can either farm the lab a couple of times, try and get a gem or a few gems that you can sell to get Ice Nova Frostbolts, or you can keep going like that through the axe until right before Katava when you run the third lab. At that point, you can farm that lab pretty repeatedly and make pretty good currency until you get Ice Nova Frostbolts. I would highly recommend getting it before you move into maps. Another thing that I did through the axe, at least until Act 3, is just get a damage over time skill like Firewall or Cold Snap, or there's a few other ones. You can use Vortex. Use that to lay down damage so it's continuously damaging while you're casting Ice Nova and Frostblink on tankier mobs. That'll help your DPS quite a lot. I just want to go over our passive tree now. So I've made a couple of changes compared to what you saw in the build guide. I saw the league mechanic was kind of rippy and in some cases extremely rippy, so I went for a lot more survivability. I still need to work on my recovery. I don't have a huge budget at the moment, so I'm mostly just relying on my life flask and some spell damage leached as energy shield. I need more leech, which I'm working on. First change here, I kept Breath of Rime for the 50% increased duration of cold ailments. Things that are frozen can't kill you, and this freezes them for longer, so that's really helpful. Another change, I decided to go and path down here instead of over here for crit and crit multi, because then you can grab this life node down here that gives a little bit of recovery and a lot more life, and this node is almost just as good. I'll path back up here eventually and through the reservation nodes. I'm only running 3 auras right now, which I'll get into here in a bit. I'll be able to throw in a 4th once I grab the reservation masteries. Another change is I have had a hard time dropping maps, and when I roll them, I don't want to re-roll them. So I grabbed this to make myself reflect immune. That along with the Soul of Yulgul. That'll make you immune to Elemental Reflect, which is really handy early on in the league when you don't have a lot of currency. You don't have to do this. This is also quite a bit of increased damage here. But if you'd rather path through Reservation Mastery, you can take another aura early on. Really, it's up to you. And all of that put together with my items gives me 4,400 health and almost 1,800 energy shield, which feels a lot better than what I was originally planning. Lets me survive a lot better against the more rippy mobs with the league mechanic. Next, I want to talk about items. Around the end of Act 10, I was able to get a Toolborn for 2C. This is a huge power spike. Gives a lot of added flat cold, which for Ice Nova of Frostbolts, if I can find it, here it is. For Ice Nova of Frostbolts, the actual flat cold damage is pretty low. But remember that you're hitting 8 times with it. So when you get any added flat cold damage, like what you get with Toolborn, you times that by 8. So it's a huge DPS increase and relatively cheap. It also helps with mana recovery if you are having issues with that. Another one, I went with Zeal's Amplifier because I'm farming Blight and I'm planning on farming Breach. So the increased AoE is nice. I also got this for 1 Chaos. The other stats are fairly decent. That's another thing that's been really helpful. And then the rest of this, I put a link in the build guide video that has all of the items for when I finished the axe. They were not terribly great, but they got me there. Last thing is Asenath's Gentle Touch. This gives Curse on Hit, which is really nice for Profane Bloom, which is really nice for Breach and Blight, which I'm doing. And it gives more Explodey, which is always good. Next thing on my list, I'm trying out the Automation Skill Gem. It lets you use Steel Skin or whatever other guard skill you want to use, and you're able to level it up quite a bit, unlike you are with Cast when Damage Taken. I don't know how good this is. I like Cast when Damage Taken because when you take, say, 800 damage, it triggers the skill, which gives you effectively another health pool to pull from before it starts impacting your health some more. This, it just is on for a time and then off for a time, which you would do with left click before. So there's a chance that you take a really big hit when it's not up and you get one shot. So we'll see. I won't have enough links to do this when I swap to the low life version of the build, so I'm just kind of testing it out now. I'm also using Frost Shields, which is really good when you're doing something where you stand still a lot, like Simulacrum or Blight. My current aura setup, I'm using Clarity, Herald of Ice, and Zealotry. I might swap Zealotry out for Determination since my damage is actually pretty good right now still. But I don't have very much armor for Determination to be increasing, so I'm going to work on getting some armor, maybe some more Reservation Efficiency, and then I'll throw in Determination as my 4th aura. Where to go from here? I am currently in the awkward transition phase where I'm saving up to get gear. And a lot of that gear, like I mentioned earlier, is really expensive this league. Like Relikesh's boots, the first ones that were posted were 3 divines, and the current, last I checked, they were sitting around 5 divines, which is significantly more than they have been historically. So I'm going to need to do a lot more farming before I can get those boots. Those boots are mandatory for the other uniques that you want to use, such as Malachi's Loop. You can still use Toolborn if you want, and you can use Will Clash without that. And you can also use a Toolless Hunger, but you won't be able to get a good charge stacking set up with Badge of the Brotherhood and Relikesh's boots until you get the boots. So I'm going to be making a bunch of those upgrades all at the same time, especially when I throw into Toolas. With the Toolas, you can't have other life modifiers on your gear, so like your rings, your belt, etc. I'm going to have to change all of that out. And since this build uses a bunch of uniques, it's going to be pretty easy to do that since those uniques don't have life on them. So I'm just currently farming, saving up for that. Another thing I still need to work on is my flasks. These are non-optimal for sure, and I can definitely reroll them. I just haven't done it yet. And then working on automating them. Like I said, this version that I'm running right now is ridiculously cheap to put together. I crafted all of this myself or picked it up off the ground, other than the unique items that I just bought for fairly cheap. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Always happy to help if I can, and thanks for watching.